Good morning to the Honorable Prime Minister, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, respective radio stations island-wide and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, December 6, 2023. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Silveira Jacobs, to address you. Prime Minister Jacobs, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Rolika. Good morning to you. Good morning to, of course, the members of the press here present. Good morning to the listening and viewing public of St. Martin and those abroad. And of course, thank you to the Department of Communications. Good morning to you for all the support for bringing this live press briefing. I also apologize for the delay in the start. I did ask the Department of Communications to inform the general public that we will be having a late start today, as this morning, due to personal circumstances, due to the passing of my uncle, we had a personal family ceremony, and I had to be present for that. But I felt it necessary to still, based on the season we are in, ensure that I do make it for the press briefing. So I thank you for the grace offered to be able to do that and for joining this press briefing today. I extend a warm welcome to each and everyone. We find ourselves in the midst of the holiday season, a time traditionally associated with giving and goodwill. It is a reminder that compassion and kindness should and must always be the values that we continue to carry with us as a country, as a people, not just during this festive season, but throughout the entire year. We must embrace the spirit of generosity as a constant thread in the fabric of our lives. In fact, it is then you feel useful in the world. Yes, we can be here to say we want to have a great living, but a great living is actually sharing what you have on a regular basis. It feeds the spirit and it encourages community, which I think defines what truly Swaliga is. Living in a space of gratitude. And I must say, over the last few days, it has been extremely busy. We have seen that the plastic-free St. Martin project was able to display youth involvement. We had a great turnout for the art competition that was part of SMDF's awareness campaign. They have won the bid from government to bring more awareness of the plastic-free project. It is our attempt to ensure that everyone feels connected to reducing our use of single-use plastic and foam, which is hazardous to our health, the health of the animals in the sea, which we use for tourism, but also to feed the population. And it was wonderful to see how the youth, the children, and young people depicted this in art. Congratulations to all of the winners. We had a ceremony for them on Sunday, and then later on that day we had a Thanksgiving service. So it was a day of gratitude for me as Prime Minister, leading this initiative, and also to give thanks as a country together with our St. Martin Ministerial Foundation. So we were able to do that. And then later in the evening, we had the first series of meetings with our visiting permanent representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And I say Kingdom of the Netherlands and not of the Netherlands because she truly, in New York, represents us all. And I have experienced that firsthand. We had our introductory evening on Sunday, and then on Monday, we had a panel discussion. After a meeting during the day, we had a panel discussion in the evening where the head of foreign affairs, Mr. Combs, myself as Prime Minister, and Ambassador Yoka Browns, permanent representative at the United Nations for the Kingdom, and her top advisor was also in the room. We were able to engage the community on the importance of utilizing foreign policy and foreign relations to further the objectives, the vision of St. Martin, and also explaining in how ways it was pivotal to ensuring that also the kingdom had a better understanding of who we are as small island developing states, and making it possible for us to access funding via the Growth Fund and other funding that is available within the kingdom for sustainable and lasting development that will directly impact our people. So this month just passed also, we at the end of November, we happy that the Thanksgiving can take place, that there is no hurricanes for this year at least. But we also had the end of the month awareness for domestic abuse and gender-based violence. And I want us to continue to keep the awareness of this serious social issue at the top of our minds, break the silence, ensure that reporting takes place. And I must commend also our Minister of Justice for increasing the subsidy to the victim support services so that they can find a suitable location so that persons who are victims to whatever crime takes place is able to get the necessary support. The holiday season, despite its festive nature, can be challenging for many who are facing loss or hardship, and I can definitely attest to that. This will definitely be a difficult one for our family and for those families out there facing loss. I wish to, though those festivities may be daunting, allow yourself the grace to navigate it at your own pace. Also, despite how you might feel, it is during this celebration that you have an extra opportunity to remember the good memories, honor your loved ones, play their favorite music, eat their favorite meals and drinks, and gather around to share the stories. Let us remember all those who are facing difficulty and offer them a kind word. Simply lend a listening ear or give a hug. Give them something that they can hold on to as they move forward. Support each other during this time of need. As a ministry, we're also focused on the well-being. The Ministry of General Affairs, of which I am the minister, and we are focusing on our civil servants as well to promote well-being. And in recognizing that, I have requested the Department of Personnel Affairs and the Secretariat of the Council of Ministers to organize workshops aimed at addressing the challenges of our dedicated civil servants in navigating the complexities of a stressful society as well as workplace. Because though we're on the front lines of the attacks, when we get the attacks, the civil servants working on these specific projects and programs and for years feel it within themselves as if they're wasting their time. So I want to encourage them as well. And so we're having those workshops. We have a dedicated social worker who has been in contact with APAP, the Organization for Psychologists, and we're bringing in the necessary assistance. We'll be having an info session this Friday at 2:30 p.m., just like we used to do quite regularly during the COVID time. And I did promise that we would do more, but I have laxed on that, so I apologize. But this Friday, we will be having an info session with our civil servants to introduce them to the programs that will be rolling out. I think that it's very, very important for their well-being. And in promoting well-being as an employer, we're hoping that the rest of the business community will see it as important also to ensure that good support is given to their workers in this regard. Civil Registry Department would also like to remind all eligible voters in connection with the upcoming parliamentary elections to be held on January 11, 2024 of the following. All citizens, so we did already conclude any pickups that could take place here of voting cards. The Post Office now is in possession, as you know, I saw that go out via the media, of all of the voting cards, and we consider it great that over 3,000 persons did take the opportunity to come in and pick up their cards, and we look forward to everyone receiving those that are being delivered by the Post Office. Of course, if you do not receive it by the time the deliveries end, do check in with our Civil Registry Department, as we will facilitate to ensure that you receive that. But also to ensure that you have the necessary identification. We, in the Civil Registry Office, are offering extra pickup dates or handling dates on Saturday, December 9th, so this Saturday, and Saturday, December 16th, so the next 2 Saturdays at the Government Administration Building from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. noon, so that you are able to renew your ID cards. Eligible voters of Dutch nationality, 18 years and up especially, are encouraged to make use of this time. We know it's difficult to get appointments, so any persons who need their ID cards actually can do so on Saturday, 9 to 12, of course, making sure you have the necessary documentation. So I'll take a break at this point to allow the media in the House to be able to ask their necessary questions, and I await those questions from you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, December 6th, 2023. Thank you for joining us. We now move on to the question and answer session, and I would like to invite Bibi Haj Shah of SMN News. You have the floor.
Good morning, Relaika. Good morning, Prime Ministers and colleagues. Condolences on the passing of your uncle, Prime Minister. May God give you the strength that you desire to go through your loss. As per my question, Prime Minister, the amendment for the 2023 budget is currently in Parliament. What I'd like to know, Prime Minister, does this include payments for a person that served in acting positions? There are a number of civil servants that have contacted me that said they served in acting positions. They were supposed to be paid their tulacking. They have not received anything. There are lots of empty promises surrounding this. And even acting secretary generals are now told for them to be compensated, they had to be screened. What's your thoughts on this?
Yes, of course, when you talk about those things, we're mainly referring to whatever legislation is in place. And though as a young country back in 2010, 11, 12, in the early years, certain things may have been signed off. Once you are aware that certain other provisions should be in place, then of course, His Excellency the Governor, as well as any relevant minister, would be hesitant to sign off on something without the proper legal basis, because you would have gotten advice at that point that this is not allowed. So a lot of people are like, how come it was allowed back in the day? There was a level of, let's call it ignorance, not knowing. But once you know, when you knowingly do something, it's a different story. So as it relates to the tulachas, or what we call in English, the extra bonuses that persons get when they act in a different function within the justice chain, that is the main, let's say, extra that is being regulated with this budget amendment, so that the justice workers can start to be paid. Their national decrees have been drafted, and if anyone is not, if somebody's name, or if you realize that you did not get a national decree when this is finalized, you have the usual, let's say, road to walk to ensure, first with your department head, and then with the relevant persons within the Ministry of Justice, to ensure that you are taken along. For us to have known, or the Minister of Justice to have known and have that national decree prepared in advance now with all of the others, this would have had to be recorded and sent on. I know there were lots of discussions, and individual, because they had to sign, each officer had to sign an agreement for what their new status would be within the new function books. So, and some of them, I remember the minister being very much concerned that, like you said, there was no actual document stating you're now carrying this function. You know, it happens, suddenly you need people, we needed to act in this function for a period of time. But the minister was even accepting an email that was sent via your supervisor or whatever to corroborate the time that was being claimed. So we had what we had on documents, but the minister went as far as she could with any types of proof to show that persons were in functions, because none of these functions, quote unquote, existed back in that time. So I'm sure that they have been quite thorough, and I'm also sure that anything that is found or discovered after the fact will be rectified as well. So I ask all those persons to just remain very patient. This has been a long process, but it's been a learning process for all concerned. We've never had to deal with this before. And I think the determination and the dedication, most of you see the reports, but we have to deal with the Minister of Justice in meetings, and she is a tiger for her justice workers. She pushes and fights, and so anyone left behind in this trajectory by accident should then make sure that the minister receives an update via email or her Secretary General to be able to rectify this once the budget has been passed, and then it can probably be done in the 24 budget, because that is also coming up after the amendment is finalized. You asked a second question about the acting secretary generals. Yes, indeed. Previously, acting secretary generals and other acting functions that go through a screening process, once you acted, you received a compensation. There is a regulation: if you do more than 30 days, then you get compensated. And I recently discovered this also with my acting secretary general. So even though the national decree would only go into effect as per your screening date, there are mechanisms in place to be able to compensate, and we're finalizing that process as well. There's always a way. So whether it's a gratification or whether it's a bonus for doing the extra work, they will be compensated.
Thank you, Prime
Follow-up, Relaika.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. I will allow your follow-up, Bibi.
Thank you, Relaika. Prime Minister, thanks for the information on the justice workers. What I'm speaking about are civil servants that were placed in position by current ministers. And now that a permanent, for example, the director of immigration is found, the acting that who was there for many, many months or a year have not been compensated.
They
and now
will
we're
be.
looking at a court case.
No. Anyone who has acted in any capacity, unless it is commensurate with their same salary, because if the function you're acting for is on the same level as your own, it's difficult to give a compensation according to our laws. So you can then probably do a gratification at the end of the year for extra work, as in your evaluation overall, your HR cycle. But any civil servant who has acted in any capacity will be compensated if they have not yet been compensated. That's nothing that you would have to go to court for.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Thank you, Bibi. I would now like to invite Emily of Island 92. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Greetings to Department of Communications journalists and to Prime Minister. I have a question regarding a statement that was made in November. That's from the Prime Minister and from the Central Voting Bureau. And it mentions that for the sake of traffic safety, it is prohibited to place political campaign material on roundabouts on the island or 10 meters before the start of the roundabouts. I then contacted the Central Voting Bureau to see if they enforce the rules that were put into place, and the reply was that the enforcement of public order, including the rules regarding the placement of campaign materials, do not fall within our remit. Instead, it is the responsibility of the Minister of Justice and KPSM to enforce these rules and take necessary actions in case of violations. So number one, it was identified as a safety matter. But number two, during this campaign process, if our future leaders are not respecting the rules that have been made public, it doesn't set a great example for the citizens in terms of our expectations that they follow the rules. So what's the government's plan in terms of enforcing the rules that have been laid out?
Thank you for that question. Indeed, that has raised some concerns and questions. The intention, we always have to look at the intention of a piece of legislation. And before it became a discussion, there have been discussions specifically between the Main Voting Bureau, the Minister of Justice, and myself pertaining to this situation. The reality of it is, in certain roundabouts, depending on where you place a board, it will obstruct traffic. So the idea was not to obstruct traffic. As we know, certain roundabouts are used all year round for advertisements. So what would be then your reason to not allow a political board? So I think we have to, and we've had that discussion, but I guess based on the focus being on, let's say, process for the amendment and the police, etc., maybe the minister didn't get around to it, but the intention was to adjust the ministerial regulation to reflect that. So in areas, it is specifically where it obstructs traffic. So you can say, for instance, in an area like, say, the Colby one, where you call that the bus driver, what's his name? The Colby one, Krytov, the Krytov roundabout. As you're coming down the hill, there are boards there all the time. So in essence, that is not obstructing traffic. But if it's in a place in a certain way that you cannot see oncoming traffic, then it's obstructing traffic. So I believe it's been basically the need to further explain that's where it's obstructing traffic. It has to not obstruct traffic. One of the things we discussed also was around the Colby Hill, on the, not the hillside, but on the other side, where all the flags are right now. The intention with the MR was also not to have the obstruction happen there, but it's not clearly stated, so nothing can be done about it. So I think our intentions vis-a-vis what is published didn't come out as clear as it should, and we will, I hope that the Minister of Justice, because at the end of the day it is her purview to finalize it, sign it off, will make the necessary adjustments, but I can clarify that it has to be an obstruction of traffic. And it doesn't make any sense if you're gonna have, let's call it black on black advertised in the roundabout, all of the carnival events in the roundabout right here, that you would say you can't put a political board.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Mr. Lee. I would now like to re-invite Bibi for her second question. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolaika. Prime Minister, I think I asked it here already, but I'm going to ask again. Where are we with the land policy? The notaries on the island, they're not signing any more documents or for leased land. So when will this be taken to Parliament?
Unfortunately, Bibi, I don't have an update on that, but I will pass this question on to the Minister of Romy, and hopefully he will be able to submit an answer to you in writing on this regard. If it is by us and requires another report or whatever, these things take time. I know we have only one legal department, which is quite short-staffed. So the focus in the last couple of weeks has been to get the budget amendments through and anything related to urgent legislation, which will have an impact on the budget because you have to do so before the end of the year. So I will double check, but if it is at our side and it needs to go through some NADA report, further report after you get your advice from the Council of Advice, requires input from the human resources, the limited human resources we have at the legal department within General Affairs.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you, Bibi. Emily, you have the floor.
Thank you. So, Prime Minister, if a civil servant wants to leave the employment of government and look for a job in the private sector, I understand that they're, of course, welcome to do that, but there is no guarantees from government that if that new adventure doesn't work out, that they can return to government in their same pay scale or functions. Yet, when you have civil servants who are campaigning in elections and they win a seat in Parliament, there is a well, perhaps you could explain what is the status policy of their job in government, and on what is that based? Is that based on historic? Is that based on some sort of legislation? And do you feel it creates an unfair playing field in terms of it benefits or improves the odds of a civil servant becoming a parliamentarian versus somebody entering from the private sector who has to give, who takes more risk, let's say?
Sorry. It's based on policy and legislation, and the LMA, which governs civil servants. If you ask for a leave, so within the context of being appointed to Parliament, you get a leave of absence, so then, but you have no right to return to your old function. You retain your status as a civil servant, but you don't have a function within government. You're now serving on a different level. So I myself, I'm still registered within the system up until when I took public office as an educator. However, if I leave office, I have no right to return to my previous function as a managing director of a school. I am then given an option based on policy, 3 options of an equal or higher by 1 scale function that I can fit in, or lower by 1 scale. But I don't drop in whatever I was due as in terms of salary as a civil servant. So you don't retain your member of parliament or minister's salary. You go back. If you choose to return to civil service, you then get an opportunity to look into vacancies and take up something within your skill set that is offered by government. And you have 3 options that government can offer you. That is very strict within the policy for every and anyone. However, if you choose to resign your function, that's another thing. Then if there is a vacancy, you have to apply like everyone else. There's no right to return if you resign to take up a function in the private sector.
So just a clarification then, is there a time limit to the leave of absence? And why can't a civil servant then request a leave of absence to take a private sector job, but they can request a leave of absence for a parliamentary function?
It's because I believe it's all still part of service and part of civil service, but at a different level. So you're still a civil servant. And the private sector person coming into government, then when you're done, you then become a private citizen again. But you can always, as a private citizen, after ending your public service, decide to apply for a function that is available within government organization. So yes, it might seem as if civil servants have more security. There is more risk, indeed, and it's just a reality of the existing legislation. And I must say, while we have been assessing to revamp our remuneration legislation for civil servants, that never came up as something, because I guess you're not looking at it from a private sector perspective.
We now move on to the third round. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relaika. Prime Minister, I think it was the week before I asked about the situation regarding Festival Village, the repairs there. You said you were awaiting a report since the bidding process had completed. Can you tell us if the repairs will start before Carnival 2024? And also the marketplace, do you have an update on that? I know the bidding process ended, I believe, November 9th. Do you know when this project will kick off?
Yes, for the Festival Village, I was just updated actually just yesterday that there was a meeting. I didn't get the update after the meeting, but our representative was having a final meeting. Eswabe was the one leading on this tendering process, so I don't have the final result. Hopefully we can proceed with the process so that we can have it done before the upcoming carnival season. As it relates to the marketplace, that is still within the organization, and I believe the Minister of TIAT would be able to give you a better update on that.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Thank you, Bibi. Emil, you have the final question.
Thank you. The discussions surrounding Enya continue, and I understand that it's a legal discussion that's probably going to take quite some time to resolve. But regardless, there's a number of St. Martin Enya pension holders that don't have clarity in terms of how safe or how secure their pensions are. Government in the past has made statements that, of course, they're supportive, but that's different than government making an official decision that they will guarantee that the Enya pension holders will be paid in the event that there's a failure of Enya, that government will stand behind them and ensure that their pensions will be paid. So will government make an official decision with an appropriate budget allocation so that the Enya pension holders can rest assured that their pensions are secured?
Yes, thank you for that question. Enya is a huge concern for this government of St. Martin, and we were prepared to take loans to save them. So I don't think you can get a bigger commitment than that. That fell through because whatever we do had to also be done by Curacao because of our monetary union and the central bank being the one in charge of that whole process. So we are still in discussions with the central bank, Curacao, and the Netherlands to come to a solution towards that. And government of St. Martin is committed to do anything that is necessary to be able to support that situation. It's not yet final, so I can't tell you what the plan is because, again, it's between Curacao and St. Martin to ensure that we're covered. But we back in when we had to have a decision prior to 1010 23, when our loans would become due and we needed to have an agreement on the way forward, we made an agreement that is for a year that would be able to cover the process. At the end of the day, we need to finalize the discussion and, if necessary, make the amendment in budget 2024 moving forward. But thus far, there is no peril for any of the pension holders to receive their funds, and government is committed to cover any shortfall at this point.
Sorry, and we'll make an official decision with the budget allocation.
That's, yes, so
Okay.
it wouldn't be for 2023. Thus far, there is no real challenge. We even had assessments done as to what payouts are due every year, et cetera. And we would be able to cover it. It's a lot less if you look at that than if you look at ensuring that you have a lump sum to keep the fund solvent. So they are looking at the off-wickling, I can't remember what that means in English, of the fund. And so that solution is being sought together with our counterparts in Curacao and the Netherlands to ensure that these pensioners are covered.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Members of the media, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. I will allow Prime Minister Jacobs to provide you with her closing remarks. Prime Minister
Sorry
Jacobs.
to be sitting at you, yes. I didn't, in my discussion on picking up voting cards, I did not give the real message I wanted to give, is that I encourage and really push all eligible voters to come out and vote. That is how you have your voice heard. We've had 4 years of rest from elections. This is a time for you to hold your elected and appointed officials accountable. Go out and vote so that we have a high voter turnout to ensure that you are represented. This is how you have your say every 4 years. And it doesn't stop there. Afterwards, via the media and through parliamentary meetings and sending in letters and petitions and requests, you can continue to hold us or whomever you elect and whoever then gets appointed accountable for the execution of our proposed programs. So I encourage you to go out in large numbers and vote. It is your democratic right. People have fought over the years, women for sure, and we make up the majority of the population. Go out and make sure your voice is heard. And I wish each and every one, as we continue to go into the festive season, a very blessed Christmas season. I'm very happy to see that the Phillipsburg community and the Ministry of TIAT has brought some life to Phillipsburg.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Once again, members of the media, any further questions can be sent to the Minister's Cabinet in writing. Honorable Prime Minister, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, December 6, 2023. For rebroadcast, tune in to stmartingov.org, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM via Telems Tel TV Plus, channel 15, as well as 107.9 FM. The official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin and YouTube channel, Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Government of St. Martin and the Department of Communication, I'm Rolika Roach and wishing you a pleasant day further.